Senator from Delaware.
I'm really fortunate to have heard the remarks by the Senator from Maine. They were excellent, and I find so much of it that I agree with. Mr. President, I'm a brand new senator, but I've been around the Senate for 36 years. And I think that in those 36 years, this is truly one of the historic moments in all the years I've been following the Senate. Because I think we're about to embark on a task that will test this institution as we begin to debate on the response to the profound economic crisis we're faced with. Last Monday, as my first full week as United States Senator began, thousands of American workers lost their jobs. In a single day, tens of thousands of families lost their breadwinners. Men and women lost the dignity that comes with work. And states and cities across the country lost the productive labor and the tax revenues those workers had provided. This was just a single bad day. But over the last couple of years, the news from our economy has been increasingly disturbing. American payrolls shrank by over 2.5 million jobs just last year, including 524,000 in December alone, touching every corner of this country. The accelerating pace of unemployment tells us there's more bad news to come. Along with laid-off workers, we have unused productive capacity. 30% of our manufacturing strength is idle. It's no wonder that Americans are cautious about spending, but their caution, as we know, is reinforcing the slowdown. Because we know that with declining consumer spending, our retailers shut their doors, laying off sales staff and management. With declining sales, manufacturers are laying off workers and shutting down assembly lines. Responses that are rational for individuals, perfectly rational for individuals making their own decisions, only add to our problems, making us all worse off. Our jobs, our savings, our homes, our credit, all are under siege. Left alone, we know things will only get worse. We have to break that vicious cycle. I remind my colleagues of these troubling trends because as bad as things are, they can get worse. Because we have failed to revive employment, consumer spending, the key to today's economy, and consumer confidence, the key to tomorrow's economy, remain in a slump. Because we failed to restore stability in home prices, foreclosures continue to spread. Because we failed so far to clean up our banking system, borrowing and lending are drying up. That is the real urgency behind the task of building an effective economic recovery plan. Because if we fail to act, we can be sure that we will lose more jobs, lose more homes, and reduce the value of our economy. Because so many things have gone wrong, our recovery plan must tackle many different problems at the same time. Because so much of our economic value has been lost, the scale of our response must be equal to that challenge. Because the risk of further decline, our response must be rapid. That is why the Senate is beginning debate today on a historic economic recovery investment program for America. We must do something dramatic to turn our economy around. At the same time, the American people will rightly judge whether we've used this moment wisely, whether we've invested those hundreds of billions of dollars of their hard-earned dollars in ways that improve their lives. Job creation and job preservation must be our goal. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Every job lost is another blow to our economy, losing productive work, spending power, and the revenue that supports the education, health care, roads, water, police, and fire protection provided by our state and local governments. Every job lost is truly and truly a human tragedy for the man or woman who loses the dignity of work and throws families into turmoil. One important way to create jobs is to make more investments that will make our economy more productive. Clearly, roads, bridges, clean water. A smart power grid, as we discussed with former Vice President Al Gore last week in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. This could become our economy that railroads were in the 19th century, what the highways were to post-war America, and what the internet has meant to our digital age. As we discussed last week in the Judiciary Committee, we can revolutionize healthcare records, at the same time save billions of dollars while digitizing paper records but making sure we have appropriate privacy safeguards. We can improve healthcare, save money, help protect our patients, create jobs. We will need to install new computers, routers, and software, and to educate and train the people with the skills to make the system work. Listen, as jobs are created, consumers will be able to spend, homeowners will be able to keep up with their mortgages, families will be able to keep their kids in college, and that's what economic recovery means, and that's what we have to do. Finally, just as important the jobs we create will be jobs preserved by keeping state and local governments able to provide the schools, the health care, the police and fire protection that we cannot do without. They will need teachers, nurses, firemen, policemen, health inspectors on the job. Just today, our congressional delegation from Delaware met with the governor of Delaware. This crisis, just in Delaware alone, has slashed our revenue projections in Delaware by $500 million in just 6 months. We face a $600 million deficit, which requires shutting down services, laying off workers. This will add to the economic slowdown and reduce the services our citizens depend on. Support directly to state and local governments will get out to where it is needed. We know that because we know those governments are now forced to cut back in the face of declining economic activity and revenues. They need the money, and they will use it. We have to get it to them. This crisis has knocked a big hole in our economy, and it's essential that we fill it quickly. Because of the size and speed of this task, we must also have extraordinary oversight and transparency to assure Americans that we're doing this right and that we're doing it openly. We must have additional resources and people dedicated to the sole purpose of auditing and investigating economic recovery spending. We must have transparency. We must make public all of the grants, contracts, and the oversight activities themselves. This is a historic undertaking, Mr. President, and we must have an historic level of transparency and oversight. You know, during my years of experience with the United States Senate, I have developed a deep respect for this very unique institution. I have seen it tested in war and peace, in good times and bad. The debate on our economic recovery plan this week is precisely the task for which this body, the Senate, was created. This is a moment that will test this institution. We must deliberate. We must debate. We must decide. There were no easy choices this week. There will be no easy votes. But I am convinced the Senate will meet this test, just as I am convinced our country will meet the test of these extraordinary times. Mr. President, I yield the floor. Excuse me, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the appointment at the desk appear separately in the record as if made by the chair.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stands in adjournment until 10 a.m. Tuesday, February 3rd. That following the prayer and the pledge and the journal proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and the Senate then resume consideration of H.R. 1, the Economic Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Further, that the Senate stand in recess from 12:30 p.m. until 2:15 p.m. to allow for the weekly caucus luncheons.
Without objection.
Mr. President, senators should be prepared to vote a long day tomorrow with votes from numerous amendments throughout the day. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned on the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, February 3rd.